Yeah. Um, well, so thanks for having me here. I'm Rachel Latta. I'm a District 1 parent. I have three kids, two one at Prescott Elementary and one at WAMS, West Oakland Middle School, and then another in daycare. I have been I'm also involved in equity work in the district through Equity Allies for many years, and also the co-lead of the Integrated Schools chapter in Oakland. In my For my profession, I'm a nurse midwife. So I work in a community clinic and also deliver babies. And I think my as a midwife, I um, also have made a commitment to only working in places that accept all forms of insurance and publicly, funded insurance like Medi-Cal and Medicaid, so that I can be providing care to everybody. And I think that's something that's important to me, so that people have access to reproductive health care. I would say that, um, those experiences, kind of both as a parent and an organizer, um, and volunteering on different board campaigns, and also working with, on Prop 50, Prop 13 reform, working on reforming the way that our schools fundraise and how our district funds schools, um, is why I wanted to bring these students or bring these experiences to bring families, students, staff voice into policymaking to create more durable, equity-based change. That's why I decided to run.
Thank you. Um, as a board member, how will you improve academic outcomes for students?
Yeah. So I think, it's it's academic outcomes are something that's, super important. And I think as a parent, now, obviously I'm not an educator, but I think as a parent who's been in, a variety of schools in Oakland, I've really seen that it's the teachers and the staff who are, kind of on the ground day in and day out working with students who are really the most, um, kind of impactful in improving academic outcomes. I think I've seen the way that, my kids and their friends and their classmates have really thrived when teachers and staff at schools have what they need to kind to make sure that they have what they need to implement programs to teach students to, work with them where they're at. And so I think that's, as a board member, my job is to be just to make sure that whatever policies we're implementing, whatever contracts we're approving and curriculum, that we're really funneling resources, directing all resources to the sites and making sure that teachers and staff have what they need. And I think part of that is because I know I'm not an expert, I want to make sure that I'm always, in the schools, listening to teachers, to staff, to parents and students about what are the things that are working, and making sure that we're really, amplifying those and incorporating those lessons into policy.
Thank you. What role should unions play in creating district policy? And as a board member, how will you maintain a collaborative relationship with OEA and with other unions?
Huh. So I knew about unions since I was a kid. My mom was for her whole career as a nurse at Kaiser Oakland, was in CNA, and so I really learned firsthand how important collective voice and also the security that union jobs provide for families. Like paid for my braces, and I forgot to, never had a problem seeing a doctor when I was a kid, and always knew that that was because of um, her job as a union nurse. And then when I became a nurse, I was a part of a union in Washington State, but we don't have a union as a for nurse midwives where I work now, but hopefully soon. And then I also was the cluster one coordinator for Bread for Ed to help students have access to food during the 2019 strike. And I I think my this as far as being a board member, I think I would commit to making sure that I have ongoing and open dialogue. My, kitchen cabinet of advisors includes teachers and LUSD. And I want to make sure that, obviously I'm, it would be a new board member, so want to make sure that I'm, would commit to having ongoing dialogue. Maybe that's coming to, maybe that's monthly meetings, maybe that's something different, but I think having open communication and trust is, I think, something I care about for everything. And I think in this way too, would want to make sure that that I'm including and centering what, the teacher voice and what's working in our schools. I also would say that employee retention is pretty, I think just as a parent, I've seen that making sure that we're keeping teachers. And I've seen the ways in which we don't do a good job of that, and the things that we can control to make sure that we're keeping teachers in Oakland. So I think that's a part of having a strong contract and also having a good working relationship between the board, between central office, between the sites and the union. And so I want to be, kind of do what I can, do everything I can to make sure that I'm fostering that, not just in my own relationships, but also, like, I think working collaboratively across the district to make sure that that's happening. Not just, I think taking responsibility for myself, but also trying to promote that more broadly. And then I think maybe it's probably important to say that I would never cross a picket line either. I know that has come up with other strikes that have happened. And as a, I supported the board members that didn't, participate in board meetings, and I supported it. I was on the picket lines for the strikes that that we've had when my kids have been here, and never crossed a picket line as a nurse, nor as a midwife. So even though I'm not in the union, I haven't crossed a picket line when the nurses have been on strike in my facilities either.
Thank you. And Rachel, I'm so sorry. I realized that I skipped one of the questions, but you did speak to it. One of our questions is just, what is your personal history with labor unions? And how would you engage in strikes and work actions? You did sort of answer all of those, but if you want to add anything else, I want to give you a chance to speak more to that.
No, I will, I'm looking at the questions from the questionnaire because the
I'm so
chat,
sorry.
I can't, no, it's
I
okay.
didn't mean
But
to throw you off.
I was like, a little bit, but I was like, I think that was part of it. So that's why I answered that.
Okay, great.
And, my mom would also want me to, it's like who I live with my mom, but, want me to shout her out for union.
Great.
Thank you. The next one is a long one, so I'm going to put it into the chat first. Will you commit to rejecting donations, endorsement, and support from privatization-linked organizations such as Families in Action and the California Charter School Association, for-profit corporate entities, police or prison unions, or Israeli lobbying groups? Will you publicly request that any of these groups cease campaign activities, such as mailers, canvassing, etc., on your behalf?
Yeah. So yes, I would commit to that. I would maybe first say I don't anticipate any of those groups being interested in supporting me, but I'm one of my, when I was a organizer before I became a nurse, I was a organizer with the public interest research group. And so one of the things that I worked on was campaign finance reform. So I don't believe that, corporate, outside, billionaire money belongs in politics. And particularly, I don't think plays should have a role in like a local school board election. And I think something that obviously as a Oakland resident and, person who cares about campaigns here was, I think surprised that it has played such a big role here. And I think maybe disturbed also is a good word to use. And so so no, I won't be taking any outside money. I plan to run a grassroots campaign, by, based on my time being an organizer in the district and a parent. I'm planning on working with, families, parents, community members, educators, and the community that I've worked with over the last 8 years as an organizer in OUSD. And but yeah, I'd commit to not taking any contributions or endorsements, support, from any of those groups, and would request that they would stop any campaign activities. I think that you had mentioned on my behalf, should they try to provide it.
Thank you. If you on the board are responsible for hiring a new superintendent, what qualities would you look for in candidates, and what should the relationship be between the board and the superintendent?
Yeah, I think that's something that I've thought a lot about, and was, I remember when the last superintendent search that we had. So I think for my perspective, and I think a lot of the parents and community members and staff, is somebody who's really deeply committed to supporting our community schools, and authentic partnership with educators. Somebody who really believes in schools being a public good, and being an important part of our democracy, as opposed to uh, maybe like different models of how people value public schools. Somebody who's will commit to working collaboratively, I think, is really important. Somebody who has their style's not, that's collegial, respectful, and not top down, would be another thing. I think, and I mentioned this maybe also with previously, but also I think minimizing how do you think working to grow Oakland's capacity and grow our workforce, really encouraging having pathways for different forms of education and different forms of leadership, which I think means having less outside contractors for work. I think making it's being a classroom teacher, I think, like similar to being a nurse, is a lot of work, and so for some people that's not something that they want to do for 40 years. So I think really making sure that there's we're promoting and investing in our own staff, and our own kind of capacity and expertise within the district. And I also think, I guess, in terms of the relationship between the board and the superintendent, I think the board's responsibility obviously is to create policy, and then the superintendent's role is to implement that policy. And so in terms of working to bring in the community voice, the families, the students, to help encourage the superintendent to follow those policies and hold them accountable if they happen to not be. And I think the other thing is just really being collaborative, but also transparent with the community. So I think more transparency is important as well.
Thank you. Do you commit to voting against school and SPED program closures? And other than closures, what are some specific ways you can respond to possible funding shortfalls in the budget?
Yeah. So I have been a part of several campaigns to stop school closures. Obviously, as a parent, my child was at, I have kids at Prescott Elementary. So I think I understand, not just from an organizer and a community member's perspective, how disruptive school closures are, but I also know that they don't save significant money. That's just not in Oakland, that's nationwide. We know that they don't save money, and they disproportionately impact Black, low income, disabled students, and really our most kind of marginalized communities, again, nationwide, not just in Oakland. So I won't vote for any school closures, especially if it's not as a cost saving measure, which I think is typically how we've been talking about them in Oakland and other places as well. I will say, my daughter went to school at Peralta for a few years, and I was a part of a group of parents at Peralta who worked with Sankofa families who were requesting a merger with Peralta. And I think if there was obviously that didn't happen, but I would say that if there were community driven desires or proposals supported by impacted families and staff to, merge. I would commit. So I think that is important to listen to the community in that respect. And I think, that would be important. I certainly would also say that we need to provide stable school communities and consistency for students with disabilities. I don't support, and I would, as a board member, not support this constant shifting around that students with disabilities experience, where they're being moved from campus to campus. They find out, with 2 days left in school, that the program's closing and they're moving. Again, I've experienced that as a parent, where we're saying goodbye, scrambling to say goodbye to teachers and students with, on the last day of school, some kids have graduated and left. I think I would support any policies that would help alleviate that or change that policy, especially, I think the community and the advisory committee has a lot of expertise. So I, commit to listening to them and supporting those policies. Oh shoot, I know I'm low on time, but let me just quickly say, in terms of future budget, I would support continuing the enrollment stabilization effort that's actually attracted students and kept students within the district. Those have been successful. I think that's an important piece of revenue, but also I think just important from the perspective of a thriving district. I want to make sure that we're reuniting and bringing Oakland students into OUSD schools, as we hold charter schools accountable. That's another place that I think we could do a better job as a district, and as a board member, I would want to do. Streamlining central office, so that we're maximizing site spending. Minimizing outside contracts, because often they're more expensive than what we could provide in other ways. And then I think also maximizing revenue from any leases, so that we're making sure that we're charging market or even closer to market rates.
Thank you. What do you believe the future should look like for charter schools in Oakland? And specifically, what are your thoughts on extending property leases, sharing space on OUSD campuses through Prop 39, and transitioning charter schools to district-run schools?
Yeah. Well, I would say, my principle, my belief is that public education is a public good, that it's part of, and having well-functioning public schools are really central and critically important to our children, but also our democracy. I do think that, so I think, I don't support charter schools, but in knowing that, we do have charter schools in our district, I'd love to make sure that, again, we have a better pathway for those students coming and even schools coming back into the district. And I want to support a, collaborative process. I think that obviously, as an authorizer, OUSD and the board, has a role to ensure that charter schools are, following their contract and serving all students. And it's, and sometimes that means that the board will vote to close the school, or as is the case of some schools that we've seen, the school can't stay open and chooses to close. And I think we should make sure that we're, kind of following that process. I also think as a parent, I've seen, kind of co-locations and leases be really disruptive. So I do think we need to protect communities, protect vulnerable student spaces, in determining where we're offering space. Obviously in alignment with Prop 39 and what we're required to do. If we are using buildings to, kind of, if we're not using buildings for schools, then I think generating revenue from them, it makes sense. And so we should, make sure that any non-Prop 39, like in lieu leases, are as short as possible for the closest, kind of well above the Prop 39 rate for the shortest possible term. And I think that's in line with our equity goals as a district. I also think we have work to do to sort of update and amend Prop 39 as well, since it's been quite some time since that's been updated.
Thank you. And our final question is just, would you like to make any closing remarks?
I guess I would just like to thank you all for providing the opportunity. And I think it's, even though I find it slightly intimidating to be recorded, I do think it's, for transparency purposes, really important. I guess I would, we just want to share, I'm a, committed OUSD parent, and organizer. I'm really committed to our public schools, and the people working in our schools to educate our children. I just want to also say, I, think thank OEA and all the teachers for the work that you guys have spearheaded to help highlight the role that kind of outside money and outside interests have played in our in our elections. So I do think this is an important part of that. I would appreciate your consideration. Would love the OEA endorsement if I do get it, and also if I'm elected, look forward to working with you all to help keep OUSD moving forward and serving our students well.